2, 1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Delusions of Grandeur. I'm your host, David Streggy, and here in the room I have with me my friend Boris, all the way from Croatia. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm surviving the winter month, and evidently we've survived the overlook. So, we are now able to tell you about our adventure in this film that was filmed in 1980. It was directed by Stanley Kubrick, which I believe he is the director of 2001: A Space Odyssey, A Clockwork Orange, Spartacus, Barry Lyndon, Lolita, and quite a few others. But
Yeah.
I wanted to say this is the movie I hate the most before we go. But let us go into what IMDb says about this film, and then we'll go into our first impressions. So,
Okay.
a family heads to an isolated hotel for the winter, where a sinister presence influences the father into violence, while his psychic son sees horrific forebodings from both past and future. So, was this a first time watch for you, Boris?
Well, not exactly. The first time I watched this movie was, I think, 2012 or 2013. I'm not sure, but yeah, that was the first time, and now I watched it for the second time with you.
And what were your thoughts about it?
Well, it's a pretty good movie. The first time I saw it, I was quite terrified, I must say. Although, one interesting thing I have to notice is what you are apparently supposed to be the most scared of in this movie is Jack going crazy and trying to kill his wife and son and so on. While I personally found these side scares a bit more disturbing, like the Grady twins, the Red Rum scene, the typewriter, those details. I personally found things like that a scarier element in this movie than Jack himself.
Okay.
Mm.
Whereas I myself, I find Jack Nicholson's performance as Jack Torrance, I find it fine.
Oh
But
yeah, that's no doubt. He definitely did a great job portraying this character. I was just trying to say that he didn't scare me as much as some other things did.
now there's the rub. Well, this was not a first time watch for me either. I've watched it a couple of times, but being a fan of the book before the movie, and then seeing it later, disturbed me to all hell because and this is the way a friend of mine puts it, and I think it's. I think it goes really well with how the film is portrayed. As a film adaptation, it is a butchery of the book because Kubrick did everything he could to destroy whatever storyline and whatever characters were in the novel to make it an original work. He warped it enough to warp it to his own sense and frame of mind enough to have this very stiff. I feel like it's a stiff film because the atmosphere of this film is very stuffy to me. Might be because of the isolation aspect of the film. Because I feel like Shelley Duvall was like the wrong character to put in here. I really do. I feel like Shelley Duvall was a poor choice in casting, and the way that Stanley Kubrick had actually, from what I understand, abused her while on set to get her emotional response for the high point of the film, where she's all scared and shit like that. Well, to get her to that point, he starved her, and he made sure that she didn't get any sleep, and he put her in a state of mind where he basically drove her crazy. So to me, any director to me who needs to torture actors and actresses to make their film and have not paid for getting them to that point. I mean, yeah, she was under contract and all that shit, but god damn, why do you got to torture a woman to get your success?
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned something about that yesterday. I mean, yeah, definitely. If you, like I said yesterday, if you need an actor or an actress to do a certain thing for the movie, then find a person who can do it with their natural talent without having to do such things to them in order to get them to do what they need to do.
But that being said, we have a family here where we are introduced to. I believe that we are introduced to Jack Torrance separately from Wendy Torrance and little Danny Torrance, as Jack appears to be getting an interview for a job for a place called the Overlook Hotel. Now, from what I understand, this film was filmed in Colorado, and it used impartiality. It used the Stanley Hotel as well as the Timberline Lodge, if I remember correctly. And we have here a interview with apparently one of the owners of the hotel, and there seems to be a silent partner sitting in the background while this interview is going on, and he just literally says nothing, and oftentimes in an interview, sometimes the person that is interviewing you is often not the person that you're interviewing for. It's sometimes the person sitting right next to you. So you get this whole vibe of, okay, why is this Bill person there?
Yeah, good point. I didn't pay much attention to that character.
But ultimately, they are shown the grounds, and they're shown the snowcat, in which it's a red tractor looking like vehicle that apparently can roll around in the snow and get them the hell out of there if they needed to. And he showed them that there was radio, and he ended up showing having them meet the on staff cook, who I like the actor who plays him. Halloran is his name, and he's played by Scatman Crothers. And he ends up showing Wendy and Danny around a little bit of where the food is gonna be, and um, he ends up relaying to Danny um, that he can. He's got special talents too. He's got what his grandmother called the shining.
Mm.
And he relays to him that there are other people that can do this kind of a thing, and some of them see the past, and some of them see the future. And I think this is the first moment where we see that Danny is understanding that he's not the only one that is able to, because Danny from the very beginning evidently can talk to, I guess, an invisible friend named Tony. What do you think about his invisible friend Tony?
Well, actually, he is one aspect of the movie that I found quite confusing both the first time I saw the movie and now, because they talk about him as an imaginary friend, he is not even supposed to exist, yet at the same time, he shows Danny some things that there is no way for Danny to know on his own without someone telling him, which implies that Tony is more than an imaginary friend, that he is an actual supernatural entity who knows some things about the hotel and talks to Danny about it, but we never get to know who he really is.
Well, and actually, in a sense, we did kind of were told by Cineflix that or Cinefix
Uh,
exactly who they think that Tony was. They think that Tony was the grown-up version of himself.
Yeah, they did mention something about it. Is that maybe from the novel? Because I haven't read the novel, so I wouldn't
Yes, in
know.
fact, in the novel, Tony had more of a role. You could actually see Tony. He was not just some finger and some creepy ass voice. He was actually you could Tony, if I remember correctly, actually appeared to him quite a bit. And before they even got to the house, he had a vision of everything that was going to happen. He had a vision of the room, the lady in the tub, some grisly hand coming down, blood, the fact that his father was going to turn rampant, the fact that Halloran was going to die. These were all things that he saw in a vision before he even came to the hotel. But all we saw in the movie was blood pouring from an elevator and the two Grady twins.
Oh,
So,
oh yeah.
but we also get in the movie we get this part where Wendy is telling I guess a doctor kind of a little bit about an incident that had happened apparently like 3 years before with Jack and Danny. What do you think about the abuse that you have heard about that apparently happened between father and son?
Well, from what I heard, you mentioned that it's a bit more elaborated in the book, that there are some implications of sexual abuse or something like that. You mentioned, but as far as I saw, that part wasn't included in the movie, so I will just talk about what we know from the movie. And as far as we got to know, at one point, Jack got drunk and he pulled Danny too hard and dislocated his shoulder unintentionally.
And Wendy, the way she explained it, and she was like, "Well, it was just one of those things. Uh, 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 Jack had come home, and I guess he was kind of out of sorts, and Danny threw some papers around, and I guess Jack just ended up pulling his arm a little bit too hard. It wasn't meant to be anything, thing, and I guess a good thing came out of it. He just he told me that he would never pick up a drink again, and he's been sober for the last 5 months.
Well, I interpreted that scene as Wendy was probably also traumatized by what happened, and she was trying to rationalize it and justify it as much to the doctor as to herself. She probably knew deep down that she should have left Jack after what happened, but she didn't do it because who knows why?
Well,
Maybe.
to me, Wendy always acted like a woman who had already been beaten down, and like she was the one that was physically abused, because she was so quiet, so softly spoken, and she seemed afraid to speak about anything dealing with Jack, and she was not one when it came to arguments throughout the film where she actually stood up for herself. So she seemed like she was kind of just there to me, and just going through the motions. She was that wife, that stay-at-home mom that just said yes to everything.
Well, interesting point. Yeah, when you put it that way, it does seem a bit.
When you've got a woman that won't say no to anything, thing, honey, would you get me my shoes? Yes, dear. Honey, would you clean my clothes? Yes, dear. Honey, would you suck my dick? Yes, dear. You know, I mean, these are the things you would imagine that she would have no problem doing, and she'd just do it with no problems asked, no argument. Just okay, let's go do this. You know, so you'd think that maybe she would have some kind of stamina and be like, you know what, dear, go get it yourself. You got 2 feet. You got a brain. You know.
Well, yeah, good point. When you put it that way, what she does later, how she fights for her survival and even knocks Jack out and locks him in that room and everything. It does seem a bit contradictory to what you have described.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't you think that, like when he said "get the fuck out of my room" after he said, "Well, every time you hear me typing on this typewriter, I don't want you to even try to disturb me. Now get the fuck out of the room. Start doing it now," or something like that. You know.
Yeah. Mm.
And he said it very dictatively. He definitely knew how to speak his words right, but while being somewhat sarcastic too.
Yeah, well, as far as I understood, I guess that was supposed to show the hotel playing with his mind and bringing the worst out of him.
Now, originally in the novel, and I know you don't know anything about the novel, but in the novel, Jack Torrance, well, actually, he's not even called Jack Torrance, as we learned. Originally, in the novel, his name was
John Daniel Torrance, I think.
correct. So
Yeah, that was
last name was
it.
the same, but it was John Daniel Torrance. So John Daniel Torrance found a scrapbook of all the newspaper clippings of the Grady murders, and he was gonna write a novel based on the concepts that were in these articles, and that was part of the story. But you only get to see the scrap table on the table next to the typewriter, and stuff like that. What do you think about this concept that he's there to write a novel? Do you think that was a good idea at the time?
You mean to go to a place other than your home to write?
Well, yeah, give up your home and everything thing for this job where his family can actually live there, and maybe try to write a good, decent novel or story. Do you think that was a good idea at the time? Him
Uh,
being so newly off. Well, it was 5 months before that he had stopped drinking
huh.
entirely.
Uh, well, since no one expected the place to be something supernatural and have that effect on people, I actually didn't pay much thought to whether that was a good idea or not. I guess maybe for some people it would be okay to do that. I guess it's up to the person.
Well, it would probably be an ideal. I mean, if they'd have the place to themselves. They'd have the time to themselves to become that family that maybe Jack had wanted to. And I think he had the plans to write this great book and get to know his family a little more, be around his family and love them the way that he did. But I don't think any of them expected the ways that this house would influence them, the danger that they would be putting themselves into, and
Mm.
how much powers their son had in because I believe that it's because of Danny that whole house, that whole hotel became alive. It's like he walked in and he sparked everything to life. You know why? Because they wanted his power, they wanted his energy, and they wanted to swallow it all up.
Oh, but if that's the case, then how come the place also drove some previous people insane, like Grady and so on?
Because some people aren't able to handle the management of the hotel.
But I don't know. Yes.
I believe that I believe that Delbert Grady was driven insane, and that's the thing. When he was in that interview, that initial interview, he was told after almost getting the job about this like grisly murder that happened, and the fact that the dude was saying, yeah, he basically chopped him up into little pieces and placed them next to the fireplace like they were logs next to them. So the way that
Actually,
the murder was described by the owner or the dude giving the interview, that was kind of intense too, because Jack Jack was listening to this and he was just saying, "That's okay, I understand."
well, yeah, you make a good point. However, one thing I found a bit puzzling about that scene is that I remember in that scene refer to the man as Charles Grady, and later on, when we get to know him, his spirit, I mean, he introduces himself as Delbert Grady. So, what is it with the different name?
I have no idea, but the fact that you noticed it is probably a good thing and a very possible mistake. But maybe maybe it was a purposeful mistake.
Actually, I probably noticed it because I remembered discussing it with a friend before. Actually, when we watched this movie, The Hike, and discussed it, and there was this one character named Delroy Grady, who was seemingly named after this character. And I mentioned it to my friend, and he made a reference to Delbert Grady from The Shining, which is why the name, which is why I memorized that name. And then now, when we were watching The Shining, this guy said Charles Grady, and I was like, "Wait, Charles? I thought he was supposed to be named Delbert." But then I thought maybe it was the name from the novel or something. But then later on, it was mentioned in the movie, so I was like, "What?"
And that friend was actually me. We actually did do a movie called The Hike.
Yeah, but I mean, after we watched The Hike and discussed it, I brought it up with another online friend, and that guy mentioned The Shining.
Yeah. So ultimately, we get moments of where we see that Jack Torrance is starting to lose his mind. And I think it starts to happen like shortly after he sees a ghostly vision of a bartender giving him drinks at a bar. And we see moments of him staring outside. We see him typing. Later we see exactly what he's typed, which is the same line over and over and over.
Oh yeah.
Also, we get a moment where supposedly his father is supposedly asleep during the day, while apparently in the scene before, his mother, Danny, and his mother were watching the movie Summer of '42. Now, from what I remember from the documentary, one of the theories was the fact that the number 42 ended up showing up all over the place. Now, I have not counted the cars in the parking lot, but supposedly the cars in the parking lot of the Overlook amount to the number of 42. So, also, we have the movie The Summer of '42, which they are watching. And if you notice on the television, I guess one of the other characters in the documentary from yesterday of room 237 also made a mention that if you notice that the TV actually has a cord connected to it, so it seems like it's playing on its own.
Yeah, actually, if it wasn't for the documentary, I must admit I wouldn't have noticed it.
But we all so we have several interesting scenes with the Delbert Grady twins, where the twins say, "Come and play with us, Danny. Come and play with us." And then you see bits and pieces of them all over the hallway.
Yeah.
They also appeared to Danny while he was playing some darts earlier. And apparently, there's also supposedly a Minotaur in the corner. But
Yeah.
but What do you think about Room 237? Not the documentary, the room
Uh,
itself.
oh, that was to me personally one of the most gruesome scenes in the whole movie, and especially I would say because it reminds me quite a bit of something I saw on TV when I was, I think, 13 or 14 years old, which back then was quite traumatizing to me. But yeah, it was quite a bit like this scene.
Well, I do have to say that even though the room number changed from the book, but
Mm,
that was partially due to the hotel wanting to uh, keep their reputation. If they ended up having to use the original room number, I guess they wanted their patrons to end up returning to the room. Although to me, I think that if that room were known to be have been a haunted or a haunting room, that would make me want to spend the night.
yeah, you beat me to it. I was going to say the exact same thing.
But in any case, I think that this scene uh, is actually the one that I actually kind of agree with being filmed really well. I
Definitely.
I may not entirely like the way the film played out because a lot of it was changed. Um, like the name of Jack Torrance, the fact that Wendy is in fact a gorgeous blonde, the fact that the weapon that your father uses was in fact a mallet, and the fact that the book ended in fire, and the end of the movie ended in ice.
Huh. Mm,
Also, I feel like the ghosts. I feel like many of the ghosts were. I feel like King did. I feel like the ghosts had more personality in the book than they did in the movie, and
well, that's possible.
I mean, we'll get to see a little bit more of that in the remake miniseries that we'll see next week. So,
Oh
um,
yeah, is that one more consistent with the novel?
correct.
Oh, good.
But in any case, here we have also outside is a storm brewing, a winter storm. In fact, people seem to be dying out here in the storm, and Halloran, um, he has been called in, and there's a scene with Delbert Grady that we see where he mentions that your son, he's a very willful boy. He's
Uh,
bringing out in an outside influence. Maybe he needs some correction, like I corrected my wife and my two kids.
uh, yeah, actually, that kind of makes me wonder why do only his daughters appear as ghosts, but not his wife?
Yeah, and it makes you wonder if that woman in 237 is his wife. But I think that's like the main spirit that is kind of like the one that is the one that Danny needs to stay away from. It's the
Hmm.
one that could take his power from him, that could really destroy him.
Oh, I didn't know that. Is that maybe said in the novel or something?
I think it's something that is an underlying point in the novel that everything like points to the fact that this room, this 237 room, whatever's in that room, it is more dangerous and more powerful than
Oh,
Danny is, and that's why Halloran. That's
oh
why
yeah, yeah.
he tells him there's nothing in that room. In fact, stay away from that room.
Yeah, makes sense. Although it wasn't said exactly what he knew about it or what he expected the entity from the room could do to Danny.
Well, in the book, the book related that one of the things that um, Jack Torrance was supposed to take care of were the boilers, making sure that they were turned on and or kept running daily. And by the end of the book, he had forgotten while going after Danny and his mother to make sure the boilers were still running, and the whole place exploded. But in the movie, as we see Wendy ends up locking him in a storage thing, and Delbert Grady ends up giving him one more chance to go after and take care of the matter.
Yeah, somehow I remember in the documentary they said that that was the only scene that couldn't be explained as anything. That was the only scene that was directly supernatural and that couldn't be explained any other way. Although uh, I didn't get that impression. I mean, everything was supernatural there as far as I saw.
Here too. I mean, it was. I mean, a lot of it was supernatural, supposedly. I mean, the bartender was supposed to be supernatural. We weren't supposed to be able to see him, and yet he was to be seen. And as far as we know, he was supposedly a live person somewhere. So how could Jack see this bartender unless he were so-called dead? We
Yeah, and
we see the dog man giving a blowjob to another guy somewhere during the whole Wendy going through the house segment. Part of the creepiness to scare the living Jesus out of her, because eventually she sees a whole skeleton room of dead folks.
yeah, and if there was nothing supernatural, how would Danny even know about the Grady twins in the first place?
True. I mean, he did see them in a vision, and he did see them appear to him several times, and they wanted to have him play with them forever and ever and ever, which his father also ended up repeating later on. What do you think about that moment between his father and him?
Wait, when did his father repeat that? I don't remember exactly.
Right after they were watching the summer of '42, he went up to get his fire engine, and his father said, "Come
Oh,
here for a moment."
that scene. Huh, yeah, I somehow didn't notice the same phrases were used in both scenes. It went over my head.
Yeah, he said, "I wish we could stay here forever and ever
I,
and ever,"
yeah.
which is kind of like one of those moments where you really start to see some of the airiness of Jack Torrance as he's losing his mind. I mean, even
Mm.
Jack has a nightmare about killing, um, chopping his wife and child up into little bits and pieces.
Yeah, actually, that scene with Jack and Danny is quite interesting because you can see these two conflicting sides of Jack. Like, there is one part of him that's still feeling guilty for what he did to Danny back then. And then there is this other part which is going insane. And in that scene, you can kind of see those both sides in one.
Correct,
Uh,
and he also comes back to the bar, and he actually somewhat relates a little bit from his point of view as to what kind of happened, and he says something to the effect that the bitch never lets me forget. It happened 3 years ago, and okay, yes, I hurt him once, but
mm,
it was an accident. I was a it was something about muscular something or other, and he was trying to go over it, like I guess to the bartender, that he thought everything was better, and the fact that he knows he didn't lay a hand on him, but he doesn't quite know whether that's the truth or not, because he's starting to doubt his actions and himself while he's in this state of disillusionment, because he just woke up not too long ago from the nightmare, seeing that his family was still alive.
y- yeah, well, that's actually an interesting aspect of his character. Like, I personally really hate child abuse, but at the same time, I also think that a person who truly regrets their bad actions from the past do deserve a second chance. And as far as we got to know about that part of the story, after Jack did what he did, he stopped drinking and he actually did do his best to make things right. Well,
there
that is until he came to the hotel and started to go crazy again.
there is also something that I think that was underlined in the novel, if I remember correctly, that somewhat um, relates, and I'm not sure if it says it entirely, but Jack Torrance, or his father, also can shine, or have the ability to shine,
Oh,
uh, and that is why he is going through some of these moments and lapses, and he can see the ghosts and shit like that. So
hmm.
it's suggested that he may have the talent, but may not be as strong as his son is, and the fact that this is kind of in the background of it all, it kind of makes a little bit more sense when you think about his character, and the way that he sees certain things, and uh, um, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Although, well, as far as we get to see in the movie, I came up with a different interpretation. It seemed to me more like, well, as far as the movie presents, like the hotel plays on the mind of people who already are mentally unstable one way or another, and we know that. Jack has had his situations in the past, and Danny has his abilities which make him see things and probably have already mentally destabilized him to a certain extent, which makes him, how do I say it, suitable target for the hotel.
Correct. And um, ultimately, that's what we see here play out, because the hotel wants the lives of this family to join them for the ultimate party of their lives.
Yeah.
And Jack Torrance, he ends up losing the ability to control the situation, and the hotel sees this, and they are the ghosts are supposedly manipulating him into taking care of the matter in the most violent way. So he ends up taking an axe and going after Wendy and Danny in a bathroom in a famous scene. What did you think about this whole? And I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in. What do you think about the fact that the fairy tale of the three little pigs was used in this scene? Do you think it went well with the scene?
Well, actually, yeah. From what I remember, that story is about a wolf trying to break
Which is
in.
kind of funny because later on, Jack Nicholson down the road plays in a movie called Wolf.
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting thing.
But continue.
Yeah, that was a pretty intense scene and definitely a great performance by Jack Nicholson. And
Well, and the original lines in the book were "Come take your medicine." Instead, his line there was, "Here's Johnny."
yeah, actually, that made me wonder why he said Johnny and not Jack. Is it maybe a reference to his name in the
No,
novel or something?
well, that may be a possibility, but if you know anything about the Johnny Carson show,
No, I don't. I'm
okay,
sorry.
it was a British television host that was on for like many years, and every time he came on, there was a host that announced his name, and it was on prime time, and every night for since like the 1960s, and I think like in the early 90s it stopped, but he was like the main late night host for like many years, and
Oh,
the host would say, "Here's Johnny."
oh. Well, I must admit I didn't know that. I'm from Croatia. I don't think that was ever on any TV channel over
I
here.
thought I thought it was a late night show that was international, so I guess that's news to me. But
Well,
he was a host that was on, and he would talk about many of the main issues. A lot of different actors and actresses were on his show over the years. He was kind of like David Letterman for a while. So,
oh, I get it.
but in any case, we have him injured and using the axe to get into the room. But we also didn't touch on the fact that, you know, Wendy actually came straight to him and said, "There's an old woman. There's another person in the house, an old lady that evidently tried to strangle Danny." And he's like, "Well, you got to be out of your fucking mind. And she's insistent, and he's like, where is she? And so he ends up going, and this is like the first time he's ever cheated on his wife, of course.
Yeah, good point.
And
Although,
he ends up kissing this gorgeous looking blonde, and I guess that's the only blonde that you get to see in here.
yeah,
And she turns into a molting, gross looking, decomposing body, and then a rising zombietic hag that seems to be screaming at him, and or cackling, laughing him out,
yeah,
laughing him out of the room. And that's kind of when he like goes off his rocker. And of course, Wendy decides that she's had enough of this, that she's going to take Danny. And by this time, Danny has left the building because Tony has taken his place.
huh. Yeah, well, one interesting thing about the zombie woman is I'm not sure if I've ever mentioned this before, but one thing I noticed about the horror genre is that sometimes some things that are only implied but never directly shown on screen or described in text in detail, what is only vaguely implied can be much scarier than what is described in more detail, because it leaves it up to your imagination and what we can imagine in our heads can be much scarier than anything that can be seen on screen. And why I'm saying this is because with this zombie woman, we only see Jack encountering her, while for Danny, it's only said that he saw her and that she tried to strangle him, but we don't get to see how his encounter with her actually looked like. How she manifested herself to him, what form she took, how
No,
she
but
did the whole thing. It could have been even more terrifying for the kid than it was for Jack.
correct. And I think that's why we didn't even see it, because it was just that horrifying, so horrifying that Tony took over, and is kind of like his multi-personality disorder, uh, his other personality, uh, 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 where that aspect of Danny took over to protect his mind from the rest of the horror, be- uh, be-
Yeah,
because he knew that there was going to be murder, and it was kind of to protect him from Halloran's death as well, because Halloran came, and as we saw, there was a red Volkswagen that was on his way that was originally in the novel the family's vehicle to arrive at the hotel. Well,
uh,
as we heard in the documentary, that was almost like a straight fuck you to Stephen King, because he destroyed his red vehicle, and this is my yellow vehicle.
mm, indeed. Yeah, for a moment I found myself wondering, was that intentional or not? But then setting up an accident scene for a movie cannot be done unintentionally, so it probably was intentional.
But
Uh,
in any case, we Halloran ends up showing up, and Jack ends up whacking him with with an axe, and that's when we have him following Danny out into the maze. And Danny is a little smarter, because eventually, once he gets to a certain part in the maze, he ends up backtracking some of his tracks, by stepping backwards
Mm.
and then covering some of his footprints to, you know, get away from his father.
Yeah, that's actually a very clever thing to do. I mean, he was that shows that he was either a very intelligent kid or that it was a trick that someone had taught him at some point.
See, that's the thing. In the novel, he had a very high IQ, but in this film, he had the IQ of a 12-year-old kid. So, him showing any signs of intelligence, are you on Earthling? You know, kind of a thing. You know,
I guess, yeah.
Round patrol to Major Tom.
Uh, 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 that that sounds familiar from somewhere, but I forgot from where.
Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
But in any case, yeah. So ultimately, Wendy and Danny end up escaping in the snowcat that came up from Halloran. But I guess Danny's father never made it because we see him frozen out in the middle of nowhere instead of the Grady twins.
Yeah, well, I guess that scene can kind of provoke mixed feelings in the viewer because, on one hand, it's a relief because he was trying to kill Wendy and Danny and so on, so it's kind of a relief when he is gone, but then at the same time, that's not what he wanted to be. That was what the hotel made of him, and which kind of makes it tragic at the same time.
Oh yeah. And what did you think about that last photo where we see Jack is in this 1921 photo from July 4th? Apparently a party that had happened in 1921.
Well, that's something that's obviously supposed to have some hidden meaning. I don't know what exactly it was trying to say. Maybe that. Maybe it's supposed to make you think that Jack wasn't originally in that picture, that he was added paranormally after he died, or maybe it had some more convoluted meaning that we can only speculate about. I don't know.
Well, yeah, in the documentary that we watched yesterday, Room 237, they made a mention about some guy standing like behind with something that looked like a Hitler photo to be like the representation of like Adolf Hitler is with him or something like that to be a partial theory referendum for that whole German Holocaust theory.
They did mention something about that, yeah, but I remember that when they mentioned something about Hitler and Hitler's mustache, I was like, what? I don't see it.
Well, Hitler had this little thing that went like right there.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, I didn't see it on that picture in The Shining.
Well, I sort of did, but that is to be explained by others who view the film. I think. Uh, let's go to our favorite scenes of the film. What is your favorite scene from this film?
Well, I have a few, like I said before, what I found the scariest in this movie are these little side scares that aren't directly related to Jack going crazy. Maybe it would be either the scene with the Grady twins or maybe the red drum scene. That one, the red drum scene scared me the most the first time I saw it. It was kind of freaky and pretty cool. It eventually inspired me to write a poem, which I wanted to find for today's discussion, but eventually I didn't have the time to find it. But since we are going on about The Shining next time, maybe I will find it until then. But yeah, I wrote a poem called Red Rum, inspired by that scene.
I think that my favorite scene is the one where he's making Wendy back up the stairs, and he's like, "I'm not going to hurt you," and then he makes like he's going like this, and she's
Uh,
flinching as he's going up the stairs. He's like, "I'm not going to hurt you, Wendy, darling of my life. I'm just going to bash your brains in. That's what
yeah,
I'm
that's
going to do.
yeah, that's
That's all. I'm not going to hurt you. Give me the bat, Wendy. Give me the bat. Get away from me. No." You know that whole thing, because ultimately in Doctor Sleep, that whole scene is kind of repeated,
oh,
except with an older Danny and a spirit that is well, an eater of shiners.
interesting.
But in any case, that's a discussion for another day. So,
Yeah, much to my shame, I haven't seen Doctor Sleep yet,
which
but
we will. I assure you, ladies and gentlemen, for we still have many journeys to go through to get there, but we will. We have to get out of the Overlook Hotel, or they may not want us to leave, but we will
oh.
get there. Maybe we'll become one of the spirits. I don't know, but
Oh, who knows? Maybe we already are.
but now that you've seen the movie once again and seen the documentary yesterday, do you see any of the possible theories a little bit more, or as we have finished the film and seen it in its entirety?
Well, after seeing the documentary, of course, I did pay more attention to some details that I wouldn't have noticed otherwise, like the Calumet cans or Dennis Apollo shirt or some things like that. I wouldn't have paid attention to them if it wasn't for the documentary. But whether any of those theories is correct or not, well, I guess I would say the same thing I said yesterday. Maybe some of them are partially true, but I don't really think that the movie was intended to be entirely about any of those things. Maybe the references were intentional, maybe all of them were intentional, but I don't think that any of those things were what the movie was supposed to be entirely about, if you see what I mean.
Well, I will say something. During the Milwaukee Film Festival a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity from a friend of mine at the time to actually go and see The Shining down at the Oriental Theater, which is one of the oldest theaters here in Milwaukee, and saw it in its original 35 millimeter thing. And gosh, the music was blaring. You could hear the dun 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 dun, and you felt like you were actually there. And I guess that seeing it that way made me appreciate the film a little bit more. Seeing it in the theater, that was, I guess that made me enjoy the film a bit more. But I think I enjoyed the film more as a horror film and not thinking about it as a Stephen King adaptation. You know?
Well, actually, yeah. I mean, since I haven't read the novel, I also thought of it as a horror movie. I didn't have anything to compare it to, so in spite of the changes from the novel, to me it wasn't so bad. As, like I said, I haven't read the novel, but
No, it wasn't a bad film. It was just a really horrible adaptation. So,
yeah,
and
that makes sense.
and it was entirely changed, and I don't like the ways that Stanley Kubrick used to get the um, um, emotional response that he got from his leading actress here. I still feel like something should have happened to him justice wise.
Yeah, I agree that much, definitely.
But the man is dead, and there's nothing we can do about it now. But the emotional damage was done, and I feel like people revere Stanley Kubrick way too much, put him up on a pedestal like he's a god
Well,
of filmmaking, and I don't think that. I think that he was a megalomaniac, at least at this point in time, to treat Shelley Duvall in that way, and then
uh, I agree, but my guess is that most people who glorify him probably don't know about those things
oh
he
they
did.
they know, they just seem to glorify him regardless of it, and think that
Oh,
he was like one of the best filmmakers ever. They overlook it and be like, okay, that was just a way to get past filmmaking, and we'll just still revere this film because it is a masterpiece. Well, just like we built this nation on the blood of the Indians.
uh, yeah, you make a good point.
But people tend to forget bad things that happen for good things, and I guess it's a good movie, but to me, I can't entirely like it or enjoy it for as much of those reasons, and I apologize for that, but I feel more moralistic about the film than I do about revering it as a film that is a masterpiece. It was a
Mm,
masterpiece built on the psychological and emotional uh, destruction of one of the best female performances on the earth. So,
mm. Yeah, I definitely see why, and yeah, like I said before, in my opinion, if he needed a cast member to do this and that in the movie, he should have just found someone who can do it naturally without having to be put through something like that.
oh yeah. Let's see. The music was uh, the music was put forward and made by uh, Wendy Carlos and Rachel Elkind. Let's see. Wendy Carlos. She was behind some of the arrangement behind Clockwork Orange and Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars documentary. She did some of the music behind the making of The Shining. I guess she was a composer for Tron. She was a composer for the video game Tron 2.0. And I guess she didn't do much as a composer after this, but let's see about the other person. I guess it was different that it was women who composed. Behind. She, the other lady, I guess Rachel Elkind, she had evidently worked on A Clockwork Orange, but she also worked on some, evidently, because Jack Black had evidently used some of the work from Clockwork Orange. Her name is listed under her Tenacious D in the Pick of Destiny. She also did the intro for the Room 237 documentary.
Oh, cool.
Or what was a contributing music for that. And I guess she was a performer for and writer for the main title of Ready Player One. Which I don't know if you've heard about that movie, but it was a movie that was directed by Steven Spielberg, and there is a role-playing instance where the player ends up having to go through a couple of sections of the Shining movie. So,
interesting. I didn't know that.
But in any case. Is there anything else that you'd like to say about this film before we close up our discussion here?
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to exploring this universe more with the mini-series and the other movie we are going to discuss, but regarding this movie for itself, I don't know. I think I've said everything I was going to.
And I think I've said enough of what I needed to say too. What?
Yeah, I just remembered one thing that I didn't mention. I recently showed you a short spoof of The Shining made by the Annoying Orange, which is kind of an old web series, although it's still going. It's just not as well known nowadays as it was a while ago. But yeah, there is a funny spoof of The Shining. If you want to find it, look up on YouTube. Annoying Orange, The Dining.
It was a little bit funny. I have to agree. There have been many spoofs, I think, on the Shining sense. So I know that this film is like a favorite of many people's as far as horror films, but I have to decline on it being a favorite per se. But I do not mind watching the film. I have a love-hate relationship with this film. It's like I want to love it, but I love to hate it. You know?
Interesting.
Like I enjoy different aspects of it, but I also morally just cannot fully bring myself to love it as much as many people put this on their list of greatness. I just can't
Yeah.
fully do that.
Well, to me it was a good movie, but I can't quite say that it's my favorite because there are some movies that I like much more than this one.
But do not let that deter you, ladies and gentlemen.
Mm,
You have also your own opinions out there, so hopefully
of
you
course.
enjoyed our ramblings on this film. I think this gave me an option to kind of like explore some of my love hate relationship a little bit more too, because it's kind of like I have some adoration for some of the scenes because some of the acting in here is definitely like very good. But then again, I would have loved if Stanley Kubrick had done a faithful adaptation of the film with still making it his own. I mean, not destroying it so much and not destroying the actress so much. And
Definitely.
and I think it could have been a very a good film all around. But he wasn't out to uh, produce or to make something that people would love. I think this was a passion project for himself, and eventually it became a ha ha. I'm doing this because I want to, and I'm going to destroy it the way I want to, because you know what? I'm the director here. I'm going to make whatever I want.
um, yeah, that's
But
that doesn't speak nicely of him, I must
ladies and
admit.
gentlemen, yeah, and I don't think I entirely speak nicely either. But um, that being said, ladies and gentlemen, just go and watch the film in your own fashion. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Maybe I'm too biased and have too much love for Stephen King's writing, but you're allowed to your own opinions and stuff. Let me know down in the comments what you thought of our discussion, and hopefully you don't let this talk ruin your view of the film. In fact, use it as a guideline. I I,
Yeah,
I still I'm still struggling with my entire feelings about this film, and I guess it is what it is. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening. Have a great day, evening, or morning, wherever you are. Don't freeze yourself uh, uh, on our word,
definitely.
and just enjoy the film as it is. So thank you, and
Thank you
God
all.
bless.